J. Brooks Jewelers is passionate about your life's celebrations. This time of year, we like to celebrate the women in our lives. Jewelry has the power to represent someone we love or a memory that we cherish. At J. Brooks, we are committed to finding you those pieces that you will treasure for generations to come.
Hello, and welcome to the I Am Mom Summit. I am Becky Squire. I'm so excited to be doing a session and speaking to you today. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit, and then we will dive right into the topic of how consistently putting your husband first will benefit your kids. So first, a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Becky Squire. I have been married to my complete opposite. We have been married for 16 years now, and we have 4 kids, ages 14, 12, 9, and 7. In my free time, I enjoy trail running up in the mountains of northern Utah where I live. And I love to travel with my family. We especially love to visit all of the national parks, and we love going to Disneyland, to the beach, really anywhere that our heart desires. I also love to bake. I make the best cheesecake in the world. So if you would like my recipe, let me know. I might share it. So yeah, that is pretty much me. I am a writer. I enjoy writing about motherhood, marriage, family issues, and faith. And why I am here talking to you today is because I have found that the majority of content out there, whether it's blogs or podcasts, seems to be geared toward motherhood. Now, motherhood is very important and very hard work, I know. But I have seen it consume women and even ruin relationships. And so my mission is to remind us all that when we prioritize motherhood above our marriages, our family life will suffer. And so if you are married, which if you're watching this session, I would assume that you are, I want to tell you that your marriage is so important. And so we're going to talk today about how consistently putting your husband first will actually benefit your kids. Although I do mostly write about marriage, like I said, I write about motherhood and faith and things like that. On my blog, beckysquire.com, I publish an article every Wednesday. And you can also find me on Instagram at Becky Squire, where I share a weekly marriage challenge every Monday. And they are really popular because I think they're so simple and so practical that you can apply it to your marriage usually that very day or that week, and it will bring life back into your marriage. And it's just usually really simple tips that everybody enjoys. So come find me over there. Okay, so I wanted to start first with a disclaimer. I believe that God comes first in my individual life and in my marriage. And I know a lot of you guys have those same beliefs. So during this conference, during this session, when I talk about putting your husband first, I just want you to remember that I'm not talking about putting him above your relationship with God. So why is this topic so important? Like I said, I believe that the most important relationship here in this life is with our spouse. Think about your children. They will eventually grow up, leave the house, hopefully, and get married and have their own spouse. And you and I are left with our husbands. That is family. That is the family. Of course, we love our children and we want them to come back and have a great relationship with them throughout life. But when you really think about it, it's just you and your husband, and that's the most important relationship. People who don't have a strong and healthy relationship with their spouse tend to invest a lot into their children, and it comes back to bite them later. Many couples have trouble putting this theory into practice, or they think they need to focus solely on the kids when they're small, and then they can tend to their marriage later in life when the kids are more independent. But that's a shift that can come too late to save your marriage. So first I want to talk about what putting your husband first does not look like. It does not look like venting to your parents or to your friends. I admit, when I was a newlywed and my husband and I would have a disagreement, the first thing I would do was go to my mom or to my best friend and just vent. It can be tempting to want to feel validated by a third party, especially somebody that's outside of that realm of emotion, but it is dangerous. Second, it does not look like ignoring your children's needs to dote on your spouse. I know that when I talk about this subject a lot, some people picture a woman who is googly-eyed over her husband while she's neglecting her children in the corner and they're crying. That's not at all what this is about or what I'm talking about. Obviously, children, especially in their younger years, are demanding and they have needs physically, emotionally, and it's our job as parents to meet those needs. But as these healthy and happy children mature, their greatest need is a happy and healthy marriage between their parents, a strong family bond where they can take refuge when trials and tribulations will inevitably come their way. Okay, and then third, putting your husband first does not look like submitting to your husband and forgetting yourself. As I write these marriage articles, I get a lot of feedback saying things like, "This article must have been written by a man," or "What is this, the 1950s?" I don't believe that marriage is 50-50, meaning you only serve your husband if he serves you. Marriage is 100-100. And I'm talking about a healthy marriage. If you are experiencing any abuse of any kind, verbally, emotionally, physically, anything, I encourage you to seek help. But as I talk about this is just a healthy marriage where you want to serve your spouse, you want to make them happy, you want to love them. And it's not conditional on what they do to you. Marriages tend to go through ebbs and flows, and especially in those ebbs, we need to remember to love our husband unselfishly and unconditionally. Doing so does not make you a doormat. Now I want to talk about what putting your husband first does look like. It looks like showing up in your thoughts and actions and words that he is the most important. Like I've said, putting your husband first is intentional. And I think especially as mothers, it's so easy to let this one slide. Husbands are not as demanding as children. And so when they need to communicate, if they do communicate that they need something, it looks a lot different than what we are used to seeing with our children. For example, a child will, when they need something, they will say, "Mom, Mom, 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 I need a snack." Whereas a husband will not say, "Wife, wife, 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 wife." Sorry, my dog just looked at me like, what is going on here? So that's just an extreme example, but this is where we need to be intentional and remember that our husbands do have needs, but they just might not communicate them. Second, putting your husband first looks like expanding your capacity to love. And this starts with ourselves. When we truly understand our own worth and overcome the need of validation from others, the more satisfied we will be in our marriages and in life in general. And then third, putting your husband first looks like realizing that when you love someone, you want to make them happy. Marriage is not a game, and there is no keeping score. Have you ever thought something like, "There is no way I am letting him touch me tonight. He didn't even notice when I was doing the dishes all night by myself. That is keeping score, and it does not benefit anyone. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about some simple ways that we can put our husband first every day. And then I will go into some more deeper, meaningful ways that we can put him first. So, first of all, just say it. Tell your children that you prioritize your husband and that he comes first. Don't be afraid that this is going to traumatize them. I think any child finds great security in knowing that mom and dad put each other first and that they are fiercely committed. For them, it is a truly safe and joyful place to be. Next, happily greeting him every time you come together, whether it's when you are coming home from work or as you wake up in the morning. A positive interaction will leave a lasting impression for the rest of the day, and it goes a long way. Next, make your husband the first topic of conversation when they come home from work. So before you jump in about how crazy your coworkers were that day or how silly the kids were, ask about his day. Another way to put him first is to not let your children interrupt when you are talking. I know this might sound impossible, but it's not. Years ago, I started doing this, and I would tell my children, so they knew, when your dad and I are talking, he is my priority, and unless it's an emergency, you can wait your turn. And so they obviously will forget. They are not perfect. But if my husband and I are talking and they come up and start talking and interrupting, I will put my hand on their hand without breaking eye contact with my husband. And this shows them that I'm aware that they need to talk to me, but that they are not the center of the universe. And it works. I encourage you guys to try it. Okay, the next idea is to just pick up his dang clothes. Now, I mean this literally and metaphorically. Stop being so stubborn. And I'm talking to myself. You guys know how it is. Swallow your pride and think about, is it really worth driving a wedge into your marriage over something that is probably pretty insignificant? No, it's not. It's not worth it, I promise. So just pick up his dang clothes. And the last simple way we can put our husbands first is to kiss, wink at him, grope him appropriately, G-rated groping. Okay. In other words, just flirt. Keep that spark alive in your marriage. Okay, so next I am going to talk about some deep, meaningful ways that we can put him first. First of all is the weekly checkup. My husband and I call this our executive council. When we were dating, we called it the DTR. You 90s girls will know what I'm talking about. Define the relationship. Whatever you want to call it, there should be a regular evaluation of where you each stand emotionally, mentally, if your needs are being met, business, kids, anything you need to talk about, you should be doing it regularly. And you should be including those intimate conversations. Those are so important. Okay, next, I was talking about meeting each other's needs. You should know what his needs are, and you should be intentionally meeting them. I read this book years ago, and it is still, I've read so many marriage books, so many. And this one is probably one of the top 2 of my favorites. And it's called His Needs, Her Needs. And in it, Dr. Harley talks about how men and women have generally 5, this is 5, not this, 5 basic needs. And then he talks about each one and how to meet them. Now, if you've been following me for a long time, you have probably seen my articles that I've written on this subject. I have one about meeting your husband's needs and one about meeting your wife's needs. And for me, the reason why this book is in my top 2 marriage books is because it worked. My marriage years ago, it wasn't in trouble, but it was, maybe just one of those ebbs. And I read this book and it changed dramatically. So I'm not going to tell you what the needs are. You can read this book, or you can go to my blog and search for the articles about his needs, her needs. But they do go a long way. And going beyond meeting his needs, you can prioritize his preferences. I want you to think about the last time you made his favorite meal, or when did you bring home his favorite treat? These little things communicate a lot of love. Next, teach your children to honor him. The way you speak about your husband, to your husband, or about your husband, is noticed by your children. Even if you think they are not aware, they notice. And it will set a pattern in how they treat him and eventually how they are going to treat their future spouse. So be aware of how you talk with him and about him. Next, minimize your commitments. Society today glorifies busyness, and it's a direct attack on the family. Don't be afraid to say no to anything that might interfere with your precious and, might I add, sacred family time. And last, choose him every single day. I know that sounds cheesy and cliche, but it is so important. We chose our husband once, and we need to continue to choose him consistently. Now, I use this word consistently. I used it in the title of this session, and I did it deliberately because it is so important. Oftentimes, we wait until our marriage is already suffering to start implementing these tips. But we need to be doing them every day, intentionally, so that we don't get to a place where we are desperate to fix our marriage, or worse, when it's too late. A marriage that does not have a stable foundation creates maladjusted children who suffer through their parents' issues, or worse, divorce. Marriage is the divine institution that brings about children. Children are not a divine institution that brings about marriage. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this session of the I Am Mom Summit. Again, you can find my articles on my blog, beckysquire.com, or you can come follow me over on Instagram at Becky Squire, where it's a lot more personal, and I share those marriage tips, and it's just a lot of fun over on Instagram. So come follow me there. You can also find my articles and other things I post on my Facebook page at Becky Squire blog. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the other sessions of the I Am Mom Summit.